All right, Jay Wells, let's get some football thoughts here from you while we've got you. Spring football, we're into week 2 of spring practice. I saw Joe put up some spring practice notes earlier today over on InsideTexas.com. A week and change into spring ball. What's been a big storyline or a couple of big storylines for you to this point?
Yeah, it's been early. They've gotten a week through, and they had a practice this morning. Our Joe Cook was there, handling business, doing what Joe Cook does, dominating. That's what he does. We actually got some real good stuff from Saturday's practice. We posted it last night at InsideTexas.com. That's Eric, Nalene, and myself. Just a couple things. One, I think the quarterbacks and wide receivers right now, I think, have the advantage in these practices. Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning are throwing darts. And you've got guys running crossing routes at the 15, 20-yard mark, and they're not missing. When you got Bond going one way and you got, DeAndre Moore going the other and Jonte Cook going this way and back and forth, it's giving the defense hell because Quinn's not missing these guys. And Arch isn't either. Arch might be more accurate than Quinn. And so I think the early impression there is quarterbacks and wide receivers are on the right page. You can tell these guys have gotten some work in together. You can tell, and it almost pretends that Texas might be more heavily relying on the pass. You lose Xavier Worthy, Jordan Whittington, and A.D. Mitchell, and you might get better at receiver. How that happens, I don't know, but that's what it looks like right now. Trey Weisner, dude, he turned some heads on Saturday. Wow. This is a guy, and understand, Trey plays with an edge. Trey is a tough kid. Very tough. The one thing I loved about Trey wasn't so much that he's such a good teammate at DeSoto and Waco Connolly when he moved from running back to wide receiver for Tiger Ridden to take the job, and he just turned himself into a really good slot. And it's not that he was great on special teams last year. I mean, he was a guy that flashed as one of those freshmen on special teams, and that's how you get on the field early. It's the on-ball defense he had in basketball, his intensity. He just plays with an edge. And I think Weisner's a guy everybody talks about, Jaden Blue and CJ Baxter. You better talk about Weisner because he is asserting himself in that conversation right now. I think the O-line is going to be interesting. I think it's going to look good no matter what week 1 against Colorado State. How that right tackle position turns out is going to be the story coming out of spring. They want Cam Williams to take it. When he does or if he does remains to be seen. And so they're not going to go into SEC play with Williams as he is right now. Cam's going to have to get a little bit lighter. He's going to have to get his protections down a little bit better. There's some things that need to be worked out, and that's what spring ball is for. On the defensive side, I think it's going to be a different identity. I think the defense was so used to Sweat and Murphy just plugging up the middle of everything and forcing an offense to do a few things that they weren't always comfortable with. Those days are gone. And so now I'm curious to see how this thing's going to play out. I think PK is going to get a little more creative because from what I heard Saturday, the edge play is a plus. The speed they have coming off the edge, and what was mentioned was Trey Moore, Colin Simmons, Ethan Burke, Colton Bosick, and Justice Finkley. And I think they've got some real quickness and twitch guys on that outside now to get pressure on the quarterback. And if they can do that, you can put the D-line will be just fine if they're getting to the quarterback pretty well. And so I think that's a big factor. And then the secondary, I think it's really just going to be these guys figuring out what's the best 5, because I think they're going to be able to go too deep. And then the truth is, I think they can go too deep across the board on this roster. That's the first thing we noticed practice last week was the depth. There's just so many guys that can contribute. So many guys that have been in the program for a year now, 2 years now, that are getting bigger, that are getting stronger, that are getting more effective. Trevor Goolsby at offensive tackle could be one of the best on the team in the next 2 years. He's the backup to Kelvin Banks at left tackle right now, but that's a guy with a ton of upside that's flashing. Brandon Baker is probably going to find his way on the field in some sort of fashion. I don't know where, I don't know why or when, but he's so athletic. And him and Daniel Cruz just need to get stronger. And I think those guys are going to be able to contribute. I mean, listen, 17, 18 guys from 2024's class are in spring. To me, that's as big a story as anything. It's last year's class that came in early, this year's class that came in early, and then the guys like your David Benda, your Alfred Collins, your Kelvin Banks, some of your holdovers from the previous seasons coming into their own. And so a weekend, I think Texas is happy with what they got. I think Sark is happy with the effort. I heard it was physical on Saturday. It was the first time they got to pad up. They practiced today. They'll practice again on Wednesday. They'll practice again Friday morning, and then they will let them go. They'll head home for 3 days for Easter weekend. They'll come back Sunday night ready to rock and roll towards another week of practice, and then that first scrimmage April 6th on a Saturday.
Justin, the depth is a beautiful thing. It is starting to flourish now. What is the shallowest position for this football team on either side of the ball right now?
Tight end. And last year that would have been an issue. This year I don't think it is, because Jatavian Sanders was such a good safety valve for Ewers. I mean, when he was focal, he was good. He had a couple really big games, especially the Alabama game. But ultimately, Sark doesn't necessarily want to throw the tight end a lot. You want to keep the defense honest so you make sure they're a threat. But Gunnar Helm is probably a better blocker than JT was. And then you've got Amari Niblack, who's going to be in the conversation, and he should be pretty good as well. He'll come along. But I think after that, it falls off. And so I don't know how much of that 12, 13 personnel you're going to see with the tight end position now. Last year I think they could get away with it. Now they still have the jumbo package with Malik Ogbo. I mean, he's not playing left, right guard. He's playing that jumbo tight end, and he slimmed down tremendously, so he looks good doing it. But if I had one spot, I think it's tight end, and that's just being picky. I mean, I like some of the young guys coming in. Will Randall and Spencer Shannon are still unknowns, but they have upside. Jordan Washington, the freshman that's there that enrolled early, already looks the part. I mean, that was a little bit of a surprise to me. I felt like that was going to take a little bit longer, but that guy's already big and already can move and is already physical. So I think they're going to get something out of him. But the lightest position, in my opinion, is definitely the tight ends.